call this segment the burn bag. Now, I don't understand why I don't have a burn bag with me. If you don't know what a burn bag is, a burn bag is an official U.S. government contract paper bag with alternating three red and white groups of stripes across them. And it symbolizes that that bag is designed to put classified information into it, zip it up, staple it down, write the name of your organization, the date and the time that you dropped it off, and you walk it to a chute inside whichever agency du jour you have or destruction facility that you have, and you drop it down there, and it goes down to a pit, well, not a pit, but a bin that goes straight into a furnace, and it burns all the contents. So one of the phrases that we use for people that we're not exactly in love with is that you're a burn bag. In this segment, I'm going to highlight every week someone who is clearly a burn bag. And I'm not going to start off with the usual suspects, the Steve Bannons and all the rest of these guys. No, I'm going to start off with someone you don't know about, but you should know about him because he is a real burn bag. I mean, he cannot beat burn bag in chief, Edward Snowden, a man who supposedly handled real burn bags only to steal America's secrets and put them on a flash memory and run off to Moscow with them like a traitor that he is. No, I'm going to talk to you today about burn bag of the week, John McIntyre. Malcolm, who's John McIntyre? I never heard of this guy. Trust me, he's a burn bag. John McIntyre is a young, I think he's in his late 20s, American, former U.S. Army soldier who came to Ukraine, and he joined the International Legion for the Territorial Defense of Ukraine, the exact organization that I joined. And in fact, he was a member of 1st Battalion, Charlie Company, 1st Platoon, or Charlie 1 in the International Legion. Now, when I got there in June, he had already spent 2 months going through a month of training at their training facility and then moving on to the Kharkiv battlefront, where he did take part in the offensive to clear the eastern flanks of the city of Kharkiv. Wasn't a lot of intense combat, but there was action up there. However, this is what I've learned about John McIntyre. First off, no one called him John McIntyre. When I heard this story break, I didn't know who it was because no one ever knew him by that name. The name we knew him by was Johnny Alabama because he was from Alabama. And this is the most Forrest Gump speaking mother that you ever heard. I mean, literally, you would think that his name would be, part of Bubba Gump McIntyre Shrimp because this guy had an Alabama accent. And the only thing that I was quite surprised at is that he didn't have a spit cup from chewing tobacco and spit everywhere like every other person I've ever seen from that part of the world. But I'm digressing. Johnny Alabama was known to us as either simply Alabama or short Bama. And so today's segment, we're going to talk about the problem called Bama. So Malcolm, why are you so incensed about this guy? Well, about a week ago, somebody contacted me from my battalion and said, "Hey, have you seen Bama?" And I was like, "Bama? What do I care about Bama? I'm back in the United States." And they go, "No, click this link." And up pops a video in Russia Today of a young American mercenary named John McIntyre who fought in the International Legion and defected to Ukraine, from Ukraine to Moscow. And here he is being interviewed in Red Square. Well, needless to say, I was quite surprised because the last time I saw Bama, he was in 3rd Battalion headquarters being kicked out of the Legion at my personal insistence. Now, I was battalion intelligence officer, so my job was also to watch the Westerners for counterintelligence purposes and make sure they weren't doing anything stupid. And trust me, Bama was an expert at stupid. He made Forrest Gump look like a PhD in rocket science. Bama, to say the least, was a moron. But I will tell you one thing Bama wasn't, is what he said he was on television. He went on Russian television and said he had come to Ukraine to act as a spy and that he had been spying on the Ukrainians and the Westerners, and he had collected all this intelligence data. And then after working with another militia called the Carpathia Sich, he left, went to Turkey, walked into a Russian embassy, and decided he wanted to be a hero of Russia, not a hero of Ukraine. So he brought with him intelligence material. Now, what intelligence material Bama would have had access to is this. Zero. Bama was a line infantryman who stood observation post duty along our line of confrontation on a river that faced the 138th Motor Rifle Brigade. And Bama's job was essentially to stay out of trouble. Here are some basic rules we had for Bama. Bama was never to be allowed near a firearm. Bama had a weapons restriction. He was not allowed to be near guns. Bama was considered so bug-ass crazy that we thought he might be the second suicide that we would have in the battalion. So he was not allowed to be around guns. He was not allowed to be near the quick reaction force. He was not allowed to be around the arsenal. And he was definitely not allowed to be around command headquarters. Another place Bama wasn't allowed to be around was my office, the intelligence office. And there was nothing in there for him. That being said, Bama managed even in an environment which was relatively dangerous, but not on the tippy point of the spear where he could be shot at 800 meters. He managed to screw things up. He barely could take part in cleaning the kitchen. All he had to do was take buckets of chicken, rotting chicken out and old potatoes and throw that stuff out. The one thing they did that was a mistake was they put Bama on guard duty. We came out one morning after he had stood guard duty. Gate guard, all you do is you take clipboard, you write down the Ukrainian visitors that are coming in and out of the gate. You check out the guy who's going to go pick up food. You let the Ukrainian workers in, and then you have a seat for 2 to 3 hours. And every once in a while, you call in on the little telephone to the watch officer. Well, Bama wasn't having that. I guess he had reached his breaking point because I get a call from the sergeant major who goes, "Hey, have you seen what Bama did?" And I was like, "Oh, God, what did Bama do?" He goes, "You have to come out here and see this." And what do I see? I see a guard shack that is made up of about 200 sandbags, big, giant, honking flour bags. Beautiful, pristine white structure. Had been spray painted with black spray painted with the words F you, fuck you, all over. How all over? Every one of the 200 sandbags had FU written on it. It was a work of art because he not only didn't spare the inside of this sandbag structure, he went on the outside, on the roof, both on the underside and the overside, on the front where the little slot was that you could see out of, and he spray painted FU in the course of his 4-hour watch. That's commitment. That's a pretty good sign of Bama. Now, what's more interesting is that once he defected to Moscow, he's told everyone that he was super spy. Bama was not a super spy. Bama was an idiot who was so stupid we kept him away from guns for his own personal safety and our safety. Number two, he said that when he went to another unit after yours truly, who he called Marcus in his briefing video with the Russians, that I thought was hilarious since I had been known and on Russian TV several times this last year with my full name. He couldn't quite remember my name, so I'm quite offended by that. But then when he left the Legion, he went over to a unit called Carpathia Sich, which they described as a right-wing neo-Nazi group, where he said Nazi tattoos were on everybody's body. Well, I guess maybe his own, because nobody goes around Ukraine with Nazi tattoos, unless you're part of PMC Wagner, the Russian-backed organization where the leader of it has Waffen SS and Nazi tattoos all over his body. But I digress. Bama then defects to Russia through Turkey. And this leads to my favorite part of the story. Because now Bama is out of my hair 100%. Nobody in the International Legion or the Ukrainian army has to deal with Bama anymore. In fact, he's Moscow's problem. And if there's a God, they will give him part of the part of the duplex with Edward Snowden to live in. And Bama can torture Edward Snowden to the high heavens. Now, you know how it's going to be. Someday, a frustrated Russian intelligence officer is going to be sitting at his desk nursing a bottle of vodka, and he's going to get a phone call. And this, by the way, I stole from someone on Twitter because it was so brilliant. And it will say, hey, that Johnny Alabama of yours, he has been arrested by the police, beating up hookers, drunk on a case of vodka again. Alabama, you're not my problem anymore. Moscow, good luck. The single best thing you could do is force him to go work with PMC Wagner. Then he'll be all of y'all's problem.